Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So we've talked about the evolution of Stormtroopers, Star Destroyers, and X-Wings. Today we'll be moving on to another iconic vehicle in the Star Wars universe, the Tiefighter. Whereas the X-Wing series from Incom was designed for independent operation, most Imperial and Sith-style fighters were designed to be tethered to a ground base or a capital ship. Going back as far as the Old Republic, the Sith kept this in mind when they were designing their fighter craft. When the fallen Jedi Revan found the Rakatan Starforge super manufacturing station, he began mass production of a starfighter simply known as the Sith Fighter. Despite being powered by mysterious ancient tech from the Rakatan Empire, the Sith Starfighter was very simple in design, armed only with a laser cannon. It was mainly used in an anti-starfighter role because of its limited range and limited firepower. The cockpit was described as extremely cramped and the whole structural integrity was labeled minimal, which is hilarious and so wrong. And even though the Sith Starfighter had some basic life support built into it, most Sith pilots wore full evac suits, in case they suddenly found themselves on the outside of their starship. While Revan was getting in touch with his darker side, the true Sith Empire had begun amassing a huge fleet to attack the Old Republic. The Sith Starfighter Corps was made up of the Mark VI supremacy-class starfighter. A step up from the Sith Fighter, the Mark VI had some minimal shielding and 4 laser cannons. The Sith Navy used these ships in giant swarm tactics to overwhelm enemy targets. Life expectancy for the average Sith pilot still wasn't great though. In the midst of the Clone Wars, we once again saw a Tiefighter-like design crop up with the ETA-2 Actis-class interceptor, co-designed by Quat Drive Yards and Sonar Fleet Systems. Featuring a small ball-shaped canopy attached to a wing with S-foils, it was highly maneuverable and featured both laser and ion cannons. Despite not having a hyperdrive on board, the Actis class had a slot for astromechs, and pilots could use a hyperspace ring if they needed to travel from one system to another. In the later years of the war, the Actis-class interceptor was the fighter of choice for many Jedi. Some pilots, like Anakin Skywalker, decreased the weight of his fighter by removing sensors and other flight aids that were unnecessary for a powerful Force user. This made the ship even lighter and more maneuverable. This was one of the few fighters in the New Republic that didn't have any shielding. But despite being lightly armored, during the Battle of Coruscant, the slower ARC-170 starfighter suffered much heavier casualties than starfighters like the ETA-2 or V-Wing. This caught the eye of Sonar Fleet Systems when they began developing the next generation of fighters. They decided to stick with the ETA-2 philosophy of lighter and more maneuverable airframes. This new design would become known as the Tiefighter. It incorporated many design features from the ETA-2 and V-Wing. Sonar enlarged the vertical radiator panels and viewport and also kept the twin ion engine design. On top of that, they added solar panels on the wings to make it more environmentally friendly. These Tiefighters were much cheaper to produce, and with thousands if not millions of systems to patrol, the Empire needed quantity. Quality didn't matter as much, especially after the remaining Separatist outposts were crushed. The majority of battles the Empire now fought were against pirates, criminals, and civilians. The Tiefighter was used as an air and space superiority craft and could handle most civilian ships, even ones with military modifications. But as the lines to restore the Republic became more organized and well-equipped, the Tiefighter started encountering problems, especially against the rebel X-Wings and A-Wings, which had robust shields. One variant of the Tiefighter the Empire developed was the TIE Striker. This sleek-looking vessel had wings designed with minimal drag, allowing it to outperform most starfighters in atmosphere. The basic Tiefighter had the aerodynamic qualities of a flying brick and had to depend on inertial dampeners to stay in the air. The TIE Striker also had a large enough cockpit to transfer material and additional personnel. Even more dangerous was the Chiss Grand Admiral Thrawn's new TIE Defender. This tri-wing TIE was fully equipped with the latest Imperial technology. It had extremely strong shields, 6 laser cannons, a proton torpedo launcher, and a hyperdrive. It proved so capable and potentially devastating to the Rebellion's war effort that the famous Phoenix Squadron was assigned to destroy its main factory. Thrawn later created an advanced version called the Defender Elite, which had increased speed and shielding. Another variant was called the TIE Advanced V1. It was based off the Scimitar Sith infiltrator ship that was piloted by Darth Maul. The TIE Advanced V1 looked similar to the regular TIE, but had inward curved wings that had armor on the outsides instead of solar panels. It featured dual laser cannons and a projectile launcher which could fire useful things like a tracker beacon. This ship would be reserved only for special agents of the Empire like the Sith Inquisitors. The TIE Advance X-1 featured stubbier wings and was very heavily armored. It had shields, a hyperdrive, and dual lasers along with a cluster missile launcher. Darth Vader used this ship as his personal fighter around the time of the Battle of Yavin. It was one of the few Imperial ships that withstood the shockwave from the destruction of the first Death Star and survived. When the Empire realized that the TIE Advance line was too expensive to manufacture in bulk, they decided to design another variant of the Tiefighter, known as the TIE Interceptor. Primarily built to go up against the faster Rebel A-Wing, the Interceptor, like the regular TIE, lacked shields and a hyperdrive, but had an upgraded engine and a new wing design that held 4 laser cannons. But the Interceptor, along with all the other TIE Fighter variants, weren't enough to turn the tide against the rebellion after the Emperor was killed at Endor. The Imperial Remnant's forces disappeared off into the unknown region where it began rebuilding. One of the first things the First Order did was change their philosophy on starfighters, reversing the mistake that the Empire and Cinar fleet systems made during the rise of the New Order. The First Order realized that starship pilots were more difficult to train than any other personnel, and were extremely valuable to the war effort. Their version of the TIE Fighter had greatly increased defensive capabilities like a deflector shield and improved power source, but they still lacked a hyperdrive. There was a Special Forces version of the First Order TIE Fighter which included a rear gunner position and missile launcher as well. It was also equipped with a hyperdrive which allowed it to carry out covert First Order missions when they were still hiding from the New Republic. Like the Japanese Imperial military, the Empire focused on producing lightweight, maneuverable fighters. While the Japanese were limited by their underpowered engines, the Empire was limited by the massive size of their territory and their need for a cheap and mass-produced fighter. When the rebellion shifted from guerrilla fighters to a capable resistance, the Empire failed to shift their strategy to counter ships like the X-Wing and A-Wing. Had the Empire had more advanced TIE Fighter variants earlier on, there's a chance the rebellion would have never had a chance to grow. Just think about how many times the rebellion was able to escape from the antiquated TIE Fighters. Maybe if the TIE Fighters based on the first Death Star were more capable, the 30 or so Rebel snub fighters would have never gotten through their defensive screen, and caused a chain of events that would collapse the galactic economy, kill a large percentage of the most talented Imperial officers and pilots, and give the rebellion the spark it needed. Well guys, that's our video for today. Let me know in the poll above which TIE Fighter you like the most. I personally like the TIE Striker. It just looks so aggressive. And guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button, and like us on Facebook so you can find the results of all of our polls from our recent videos. Well, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.